Although look at the Dust Bowl solely as an environmental disaster is an oversimplification. Our drought was compounded by the Great Depression, a time when 1 in 3 Oklahomans were on some type of government relief. But during these dire days began 2 programs that improved lives and our environment, and in doing so gave us buildings and landmarks we still enjoy today. Standing atop a rocky outlook over glimmering waters, Tucker Tower is an iconic landmark that can be seen from most any vantage point on Lake Murray. Limestone slabs cut by hand and stacked skyward. An ideal lookout to see the beauty of this area outside Ardmore, Oklahoma. But it's inside the tower, lining the walls, the story of how America worked its way out of the Great Depression and is best told by the Oklahoma History Center's Bob Blackburn.
Well, we started really in 1933 with the CCC, one of my favorite programs in American history, especially when you think about what it did for that generation and what it's done for us ever since. And the CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps, was a brainchild coming out of the Franklin D. Roosevelt administration, one of the earliest of the New Deal programs, trying to provide direct relief for the unemployment and the suffering. And it was not welfare. It was let's go to work. Let's do something that helps the community. And these kids, aged 18 to 25, would go off into a military type setting, and they would get training from Army personnel. So they would drill. So they were learning discipline. They were learning how to work together. They were learning skills. And then the objective of the CCC was, as the name implied, conservation. Let's build shelter belts. Let's take care of erosion. Let's go into communities and do something together to conserve the quality of life in a community with an amphitheater or a public library or a public swimming pool or bridges that needed to be repaired so people could get from here to there. And so the CCC was one of those early programs that made such a vital difference. And then on the other side of that coin, the public side to the private side, those kids were learning lessons about life, and they had the ability to send $25 of their $30 monthly pay home to the family. That money was used generally to put food on the table, to provide the necessities of life at a time when people were wondering, where is my next meal coming from? And leading to the desperation of the Joad family in Grapes of Wrath and saying, I've got to get out of here. I've got to leave my home. I've got to leave my family, my roots, my church, and hit the road into the great unknown. That's an act of desperation. That's what we were dealing with in the early 1930s.
So essentially recognizing at the time that a public works program was better than public assistance.
Exactly, and that was the beauty of the CCCs. And then that would continue with the Works Progress Administration, the WPA, as it's better known. Now that came a little later in Oklahoma because we had a governor at the time, Alfalfa Bill Murray, who was an old-time populist, states' rights advocate. He did not want the federal strings on grants. And the WPA, the PWA, the Public Works Administration, as well as the Works Progress Administration, provided block grants to the states. And then the theory is that the state, then working through its sub-units, such as the Parks Department that was created in the 1930s, cities and counties, would then raise the money for the materials, and the PWA, WPA would provide the money for the labor, with the idea we are going to put people to work. We're going to put a shovel in their hand. We're going to get them on a project, building a city hall, a convention center, a county courthouse, a bridge, a road, whatever it was that would improve the quality of life. That's how that money would be spent. And it was not geared to efficiency so much and mechanization, but it was geared to employing people. So yes, you might have been able to hire a crew on a tractor to do something in a week, but instead they would employ 30 people and take a month. And so the mission was really a dual thing. It was to do something for the community and then to provide employment for these people who wanted to work but had no opportunity to work. Instead of taking a handout, they were given a hand up.
Employing more than 90,000 Oklahomans, But just as importantly, what the CCC and the WPA did was prepare what's been called the greatest generation of Americans for the storm clouds of war that was soon to be on their horizon.
Well, of course, when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, the nation had to come together immediately. And you saw that with the leadership of Franklin Roosevelt, the leadership in the Congress, and the nation rallied to one purpose. I believe that the 1930s lead up to that had an impact because instead of everyone out on their own, survival of the fittest, if you were hungry, too bad if you couldn't find it. The weak shall perish and the strong shall survive. Well, instead of that, you had these programs that draw us back together, using facilities that are part of these programs to build infrastructure. It was for us, not for one company, not for one person, but it was for all of us. And that sense of community was at the heart of the CCC and the WPA and the PWA in trying to work together for the common good. And with that culture there at the grassroots level, when it's time to go to war, when we have to be united, one voice speaking and determined to win, then we were ready.